great to see you. It was great to
Good.
have you here.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Uh, your new album, Permission to Land. I think because in the last couple of years you released a lot of different albums, but on this album it seems that you are going back to the 70s prog rock music, kind of.
Well, first of all, it's Permission to Fly.
What did they say?
Next, my next album will be called Permission to Land.
Did I say Permission to Land? Sorry. I'm
Yeah, no, I like
I'm
it.
going to in the future right
That's a
now.
good follow-up album. I like the idea. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. But first we have to get them flying before we get them to land, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. So yeah, I mean, progressive rock is that's like my main influence in the rock space. So that's very, very strong background. So that's why, the album and the music comes out with a lot of that kind of like feeling about it.
Hmm. And when it comes to this prog rock, it's very diverse. I mean, the term progressive rock today, it means everything basically, from stuff that was written in the 70s to very experimental stuff that is being written now. What does it mean to you?
Right. Yeah, so that's a very good question, because I think that it's important. Like, what's unfortunate is that people think of like progressive rock, and that's like music of like the 70s or like 80s kind of thing. And yes, there was a lot of progressive rock that was made then. That's when the style originated and was very, very strong as well. But the idea of progressive rock is more important, because that is not something that is just 70s or just 80s. Progressive rock goes on because anytime you take musical influences and you put them all together in a rock context, and it kind of like advances the art form in any way, it can be considered progressive rock. Imagine, like, you've got that kind of rock energy, but you're using like harmonic ideas and rhythmic ideas that are more than just the standard 3 or 4 chord like rock kind of approach. You're starting to tap into more information harmonically, rhythmically, sonically, and apply a rock kind of spirit to it. That's progressive rock. And that could be done in 20 years from now, today, and was done, in the 70s, when rock was really almost like different styles of rock were being formed. Somebody said, oh, wow, we can use this energy and we can apply classical harmonies to it, or, jazzy rhythms or anything like that. So I think that spirit, continues. And I think it's really kind of it's a cool thing. And I think it's important to continue. And that's who I am musically. I'm someone who has the classical background, that discovered synthesizers, when I was 17, 18, started to make electronic music, started to be influenced by some of the people who were doing combination kind of music with rock and classical and rock and fusion and jazz. And so now these days I use all my various musical influences and apply them to create what can also still be called progressive rock.
Mhm. Yeah, and on this new album, it really shows, especially the songs like "Haunted Reverie," which the intro to this song, to me, it sounds like Frank Zappa.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, right. Anything is fair game, right? You can do whatever you want. I mean, it's not, one of the things about my music, Dream Theater's music, all that, is that we're not trying to tap into this music didn't come to be by trying to make it into a particular style. It's not like pop music, or it's not something of fashion. It's music. We're composing. We're just like, I view us as like composers. And that's why I think we have longevity as well, because of that kind of approach to things. Um, Yeah, I think that makes a big difference. So hey, if I want to write something wacky, crazy with orchestral instruments and some kind of a dissonant, spin of sound, then that's all good, right?
Yeah, but exactly. But what you said before, to me, Frank Zappa is one of the examples of people who were really progressive in a way that he wrote the rules. He didn't follow any, rules. He established them, and he did what he wanted, basically, right?
Right, totally. And yeah, like I don't often point to Frank Zappa as like an influence, but in some ways he was as well because of what he did, and even some of the harmonic things that he did. I remember actually years ago when we were working on Scenes from a Memory, and Mike said to me, we were in the middle of working on a song, and he was like, "Man, it would be so cool if we had like a Zappa type part over this riff." And I was like, and I, very aware of Zappa. I was like, "Oh man, just give me a little time. I'm going to write something that's like that." So we were all sitting in the control room at the studio, and I took my music paper and my pencil, and I went upstairs to a little quiet room, and I wrote this whole section with some very interesting, weird chords, whatever, like brassy chords. And I came back down and I played it for him and them. And he was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." It was actually the part in Beyond This Life that goes very, very Zappa. It ends up with a unison that John and I played together on the keyboard and guitar. But yeah, I mean, he broke all the rules and created that cool sound and got us all thinking a little bit more.
Yeah, and Mike is big Zappa fan. He has a Zappa tattoo on his leg, even.
Yeah, he's a big
Yes,
fan. Right.
absolutely. And on this young album, you have a great band. You have Joe Payne on vocals, Derby Todd on the drums, Steve Dadane on guitar. How did you collect this band for this album?
So the vocalist, when I decided that I wanted to have a good amount of vocals on the album, I needed to figure out who was going to sing, and I was very, very particular about that. Some suggestions, some ideas came into mind, and I had to really listen and kind of soul search a little bit with what I wanted to do about the vocal sound. But then I spoke to my friend Roy at Prog Report, and he actually mentioned Joe Payne to me, who I didn't know. But he sent me a link of his voice, something from his group called the Enid from way back when in progressive rock history. And I heard it and I thought, "Oh, wow, great voice." So he arranged for us to have a conversation. And to make a longer story short, at some point in our communicating, I said to him, "Hey, would you like to sing on my solo album? Because that'd be awesome." So he was like, "Yeah, I would love to." So that's how that came about. And one really great thing was I had written the basic melodies for all the songs and I sent them to him. But he is not only a great singer, he's also a really knowledgeable musician. And he was able to offer me more than just repeating what I asked him to do. He had some beautiful ideas for vocal phrasing. He had ideas for vocal arrangements going beyond like standard harmony kind of things, like just singing in thirds or sixths or whatever it is. So he came back to me with all these ideas. I was like, "Wow, this is great." All of a sudden, my world, the Jordan world, had become larger. I'm starting to have this like band, which is what I wanted. Um, so that worked out perfectly. Plus the fact that he can record all his vocals himself and really get a great sound in his studio. The other, one of the other players was Darby Todd, the drummer. And Darby, I met when I was out on the Dream Sonic tour. He was playing for Devin Townsend. And he and I became friends very quickly. He's a really great guy and a great drummer. And I needed to find somebody who was able to play all these crazy rhythms, this wild stuff, that had the time for it, the patience, would do a great job. And I asked him if he would be interested. And I warned him, I told him, the music is quite difficult. And he was like, "Don't worry." He says, "That's why people hire me, to do the difficult stuff."
Yeah.
So
When he plays with the with Devin Townsend, I guess he's used to it.
yeah, Devin has some very complicated stuff. So he was into it, and he also was able to do all the drum parts and record them at his own studio, which was fantastic. The um the guitarist, I had a couple guys play guitar on the album. Steve Dedayan actually did all the rhythm parts and joined me for some really interesting unison parts as well on the album. And Steve is actually a full-time dentist, but he's also an incredible electric and acoustic guitar player. And originally, I was going to play a lot of those parts from my keyboard, because these days I have every sound in the world, and I can play guitar-like sounds on the keyboard. It's not a problem. But when I was hanging out with Steve one day in the studio, and I was turning him on to how cool my keyboard guitar sounds were, he was like, "Yeah, that's really cool. It's great." He says, "But why don't you let me take it home and I'll play real guitar instead?" I was like, "Okay, sure. Let's see what it sounds like." So he took it home and he sent it back to me, and I was like, "Okay, that's really better. That sounds great." So he was like, "Let me do all the guitar stuff."
Yeah.
So I let him do that, and he did an incredible job. Not only the electric guitar stuff, but the acoustic guitar stuff too. Um, so that upped the level. That made it so much better. I also discovered this young Chilean guitar player whose name is Bastian Martinez, um, who is just a phenomenal, like, next generation guitar, virtuoso. And he played a couple solos on the album, one on the song Embers and one on the song Into the Lair. He's doing some good, nice trading with me. And then I should also say that I played a few guitar leads on the album as well, because I've been playing the guitar now for a few years, and I wanted to play a little bit on the album. So I did that. So I played a few of the leads. And the other big contributor, which needs to be mentioned, is my daughter, Ariana, who wrote the lyrics for the album.
Mhm.
So she was a really important key player, and she took on the job of writing all the lyrics, making up all these great, stories, and also to help kind of co-produce the record as well.
Yeah, and I guess the lyrics are really great because, as you mentioned, there's some sort of storytelling in the lyrics, which is, I guess, really broadens the meaning of the songs, which are, very progressive, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so she had a general kind of concept that she was going on. She was looking at the world events and thinking about, the various wars that are going on in our world, and and also the beautiful things that are happening in the world today, which there are some, not to forget. And she built her stories, she built her, lyrics for each song around that kind of concept. And I didn't, I let her do that job. I had written all the music, I had made the melodies. I was like, fantastic, you take it, and use your language skills and creativity and write some words. And, it was our first time officially collaborating like that, because certainly in her life, we've done a lot of musical things together. But this was an official collaboration, and she really took it and was so helpful to the whole album process.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess this is what it's about. Everyone brings their own contribution, and it makes it like a real band. Really, it's not a really
Yeah,
solo project,
so,
but a real band, right?
yes, that's what I wanted. That's totally what I wanted. And I'm so happy because everybody that I've spoken to has responded to it in that way, to say, "Hey, it really feels like a band here." And I'm like, "Great," because that's what I wanted to do. And one of the things that I have in mind about it is that now that I set up this kind of like band, it's a great opportunity to bring it forward into the future as well. So yeah, it was definitely one of the thoughts in my mind. Like, I'd like to work with Joe Payne again. I'd like to work with this team again. I thought, this was cool, and that it, came together. And then that we were able to make this album, and I think it came out very well. And people seem to be really responding to it positively. So Yeah, it's great.
Mhm. And you are releasing this album now, which is very busy period for you because Dream Theater is coming back. They're recording a new album, and of course, Mike Portnoy is back in the band, and everyone is talking about Mike coming back to Dream Theater, and
Yeah,
you already worked with him on the Liquid Tension Experiment 3 album a couple of years ago with John. So I guess that was a
right.
quite important step for him to rejoin the band. Do you see it like that?
Um, yeah, I mean, we've always stayed in touch, and in my mind, we've never lost that kind of like connection. I think it was just a matter of time until he returned, right? And the liquid tension thing, that's something that we were doing. It's something that we started. And the fact that we could do another one during the period when he was gone, yeah, that was great. Just to keep that, not only the personal, connection, but also the musical connection. And I think, things like that, and things like the fact that he went on tour with John and did a whole, John Petrucci solo tour, really, allowed things to kind of move in this direction a little bit easier. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was 13 years that he was gone, but when he finally came back and walked in the room and we started to work, it was as if it was just like the next day, or it's like it didn't feel like there was really any break.
Mhm. So, was there any particular moment that you knew that he's going back, that you felt that, okay, he's going back to the band?
I'm sorry, any moment where I knew that he was coming
Yeah,
back?
yeah, yeah. When you realized that Mike is coming back to Dream Theater, did you discuss it or did it?
It all happened pretty quickly. It was almost like, okay, the time is right now. Let's let's do this. And then, we made it happen, and everybody was in agreement that it should be that this is the best time. So honestly, I felt it coming. It was just a matter of time. I just almost felt like I was watching, like, from the side, going, well, one of these days he's coming back. Like, when is it going to be? One of the stars going to align and everything going to be cool to allow him to just do it? Because I felt like, you know, he really belongs. I don't. A lot of times I would feel sad because I felt like Dream Theater was like his baby. It was like, it doesn't make sense that he's not here. I mean, I do want to say that, we had 13 years with Mike Mangini, and Mike Mangini is an incredible drummer and did a fantastic job with the band all along. And, we put out some great albums. We won a Grammy. We did fine.
Yeah.
But you have Mike Portnoy there, who, again, it was his thing, like, okay, so it feels very much like home. Now that we're all together again, there's this really kind of cool feeling, like, wow, the core band is together again. Great, let's do it. This is exciting.
Yeah, it
So,
seems like one of the best reunions in rock history of all time, I guess. And everybody
or
was waiting for it, yeah. And you are
right.
already working on the new album. And in one interview, Mike compared the new album to albums between the Scenes and Black Clouds. Could you comment it? How would you compare them? What could you say about the new album?
What's interesting to me is that, like, people always talk about, like, they would compare Mike Mangini to Mike Portnoy, and, yeah, just talk about it in interesting ways. And I would always think, like, Mangini's a fantastic drummer. Portnoy's a great drummer. Like, uh, and I didn't totally acknowledge, I guess, like the the emotional difference that you can get from one drummer to another, like when they're just doing their thing behind the drums. And again, I do want to say Mangini was amazing, right? But there is something that I do notice and feel with Portnoy behind the drums playing with Dream Theater. It's maybe indescribable, or maybe it's describable, but it's an absolute vibe. It's a thing. It becomes part of the energy, a big part of the energy about what we're producing. And this album just screams that vibe. Not only that, it has so many of the kind of what I would call like a Portnoyism kind of like influence in the album. You know, when you hear it, you know exactly what I mean. Like conceptual things that we're doing in the album that just are like, you know, a little bit different than what we've been doing without him. So yeah, I mean, I can understand why Mike pointed to like those particular albums. I kind of agree, you know, with that thought. But I guess I want to say that, you know, now every time I review what we've done now, um, with the new album, I keep thinking, man, the fans are gonna love this. This is so cool. I'm really excited about it. I really think that you know, we spent the time and really applied ourselves to making something that would be, you know, really substantial and powerful, you know, and of course Dream Theater fans will always complain. There'll be things that they'll complain about because they're very difficult and wonderful at the same time audience. You know,
Yeah.
they'll find stuff to say, of course, but I will say that what they can't say is that this is we're going to put out something of, you know, top Dream Theater quality.
Wow. And is it too early to ask, are you going to have like a bigger form of this album, like a suite or maybe 15 or 20-minute long song?
Yeah, it's a little too early to get into the
Okay.
details like that. We're not quite there yet.
Okay. Okay. And you're going to tour very soon with Dream Theater. You're going to also play in Poland, and this is going to be 40th anniversary tour. Have you already started rehearsing for this tour?
Not yet. No. Matter of fact, I'm on vacation now, and I have a little bit more time. But when I get home, I got to get very busy. There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
So, and then on my own, before we even get into the band rehearsals. So, excuse me. So yeah, so a lot to do, and then, you know, I'll join the boys a little closer to you know, the time when we have to go out to put our show together. But what's interesting about this concert tour that we've never done before, this one starts at the O2 Arena in London. So it's not like there's any time to like warm up or like play some smaller shows while we get ready, you know, and get our show together. Day one is like we have to be totally on. So we've made some extra time, you know, in rehearsals as well because, you know, we had to. This is going
Mm.
to be exciting and intense.
Yeah, I guess. I hope so. I want to ask you also something completely different. A couple of years ago, you played on the debut album by Polish band Scream Maker. And I heard a story. I want to ask you about this story, how you met Sebastian, because apparently you just met when you were walking on a street in Warsaw and he approached you. And this was long before even the band Scream Maker was formed, right? Do you remember this?
Yes, I do, of course. Yeah, he's one of my friends over there. Yeah. Um, yeah, I remember meeting him. He was like a philosopher kind of guy, I've always found him to be very smart, very thoughtful guy. And then one day he says, "Oh, I'm a singer." I was like, "Oh," I met him when he was in school, I think. And yeah, so then he sent me his music. I was like, "Oh my God, this guy can really sing." It's really funny. So every time I see him, I have to look at him a little bit differently, you know, than when I first met him as a student into philosophy, or whatever, you know, this kind of thing. So
He just
yeah.
approached you on the street and he walked you up
Yeah.
to Warsaw, right?
We just started to talk. Like immediately we were friends, you know, like this happens sometimes, you know, you meet somebody with a really nice energy and you start to talk and you go, "Oh, I like this guy. This is cool," you know. And then that was definitely the story. So we kind of stay in touch. When I come to Poland, very often we'll have coffee or, you know, lunch together or something, you know.
It's amazing when you can meet people like that just on the street.
Oh yeah.
I think that one of the benefits of being, rock star and going around the world. I want to ask you also, what does permission to fly mean to you? What is the
Yeah,
meaning?
I'm going to answer that, but let me also say that I need to close up soon because I have
Okay,
another interview.
okay,
Yeah. What does the permission to fly mean?
yeah,
Yeah. So what it means to me is that I like the sound of this name and I like the meaning of it because I was offering, in my mind, In my mind, I'm offering the listener permission to take the journey, to go on the musical journey, to allow themselves to fly and, maybe throw on some headphones or just sit in front of the speakers and take off, go for the trip and, experience the whole thing. And I suggested that with this title, and I wanted to maybe have a little influence in that, in that regard, because I feel like people don't listen to music that way anymore. They're always doing something else, listening while they're looking at whatever, or they're just listening to one song, or they're, exercising and trying to walk to the beat. Or I'm disappointed in our society that we're kind of got to this spot where most people aren't really able to enjoy albums anymore. So, doing an album like this and giving it a title like that is very much about kind of saying, hey, let's not forget about the fact that there are these beautiful opportunities to enjoy and use music to enhance our lives, So that's very much about what Permission to Fly means to me, and what my offering of calling the album is all about.
Okay, Jordan, thank you very much for the interview. Thank you for your time, and good luck with everything. And good luck with your next album, Permission to Land. I guess this is, you
And
have to do
for
this.
that. And thank you so much for that suggestion. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.